Welcome to Industry Insights with Route Consultant, your front row seat to the fast-moving world of logistics and beyond. Each week, we bring you game-changing insights, real-world strategies, and fresh perspectives to fuel smarter investments and build stronger businesses. Join us as we sit down with expert guests to explore emerging trends and pressing topics across a wide range of industries. This is Industry Insights. Right, everybody. I think people are going to start trickling in from the waiting room. So,
Awesome.
as everybody comes in, Amy, and everybody who's live, welcome to our first live Industry Insights session in a long time. It's actually the first one this year.
Yeah.
For those of you who might have followed our content for a while and gone and seen a bunch of our webinars in the past, we used to do these webinars actually every single week. But over the last year or so, we've adopted a little bit of a different style with some produced content in our studio and some interviews that release each week. But I think there's room for both of those types of content. So one of the things you're going to start seeing more of are some of these live webinars that will occur throughout the years that you have a place to come and ask questions and check in with us as things happen. If you are here for the first time, my name is Josh Gregory. I'm the Vice President of Operations here at Route Consultant. If you're not familiar with our team, we ran hundreds of routes across the country in both P&D and Linehaul. And today we're really focused on helping new buyers that are looking to get into the space for the first time and help contractors to find more efficiencies, understand everything that's happening in the world of FedEx or whatever logistics industry they're a part of, and find additional profitability. So I'm also joined here by Amy Byers. Many of you might know Amy, but she is a P&D and line haul contractor with routes and runs across the country and has tons of experience. So she is here as always when we do these to bring all of her knowledge. So Amy, why don't you just give a quick intro on yourself?
Yeah, just briefly, my husband David started One Man, One Van almost 20 years ago. And we are now 240 employees, 200 trucks. We are in 8 terminals in Linehaul and P&D. We have 5 P&D contracts, all within the same hub area, which is very tight regionally, which is very unique for us. And we also run Linehaul, not over the road. We run local Linehaul and P&D spots for Linehaul. And then we also have a custom critical run. We're building that operation as well. We are in 2.0 in one of the contracts right now on the P&D side. Growing into 2.0 obviously is going to be a hot topic today. 7 days express. We kind of have rural, suburban. I mean, we're kind of all over the place. So over the last 20 years, we've seen it. So we're excited to share, as always, with Route Consultant and the Contractor Network.
Perfect. And today, for everybody who's tuning in, the format is going to be a little bit different. It's not going to just be us presenting a topic. It's mainly just going to be Q&A, where I'm going to be pulling Q&A. We actually set up a poll in our social media platforms over the last week of the topics and questions you guys had. So we're pulling a lot of those in. I'm also going to be taking questions live. So as we're talking, if you have questions that you want to ask, follow up, or any questions of Amy and I, if you put it in the Q&A button at the bottom, if you put it in the chat button, actually, oh man, is there still a Q&A button?
Yes.
Okay.
I see it, but I don't know if it's in there for everyone else.
Okay, you might have to click the more button and then click Q&A if you're looking for it, because I just couldn't find it. Zoom likes to change things up on me when I'm not ready for it. But yeah, if you have a question, put it in the Q&A box. And Scott, I do see your question, so that worked. And so if you put it in that chat feature, I'm going to miss it. But if you put it in the Q&A, I'll see it as it happens, and I will ask those questions live.
Perfect.
So before we get into all of that, Amy, it actually is Women's History Month. That's one of the things that we are doing this month in some of our content. So one of the things that we're really trying to highlight is that this is an industry, trucking and logistics are industries that are not just for men, that you can be successful. And Amy, obviously, you've been very successful in this industry, as you just walked through. So you don't have to go, a whole dissertation, but can you just talk a little bit about what your experience has been as a woman in the trucking and logistics industry over the years?
Yeah, so it's super exciting. When I first came on with Dave, he was kind of the AO. And it was a guy's industry. Trucking industry was predominantly men, and it's been really exciting to go to FedEx conferences, trucking conferences, Ohio trucking conferences, truck driving championships, and see the amount of not just truck drivers that are women, but women owners and women AOs. So super encouraging, super uplifting. It just shows that your business experience and acumen can very easily transfer into this industry, and that the kind of that barrier is lowered now. It's just kind of a norm. I actually run into in one of our contracts, we're actually 75% women drivers, as
Wow.
to the men. So go ladies. um, but yeah, so I mean, I think it's just cool that the barriers have dropped, and it's just a level playing field. So it's pretty cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if anybody has follow-up questions on that, you can ask. But that's the main thing I wanted to highlight is that this is not something where if you're a woman, you're automatically invalidated or having to climb an
Oh,
impossible barrier. This is something that I think has gotten a lot better over the years. But
absolutely.
perfect. And again, I'm still seeing a lot of the questions come in the chat. I can kind of see them and track them, but if you have questions, put it in the Q&A, not the chat, so that I can try to stay on top of it and not have to manage both of those.
Yeah.
Um, so the first topic that I want to touch on, Amy, is the one that I think we get the most questions right now from people who are looking at FedEx and thinking about how FedEx is changing, which is 2.0, the new
Mhm.
model with FedEx Express. So can you just at least walk people through what your experience has been over the years? Because as you just said, there's a few different places you find yourself when it comes to 2.0 right now.
Yeah, so 2.0, just to give a little bit of base history, we've been in 2.0 in one of our terminals for over 3 years. So we were kind of in the very beginning of 2.0 in its infancy. So I always joke that it's like 2.5 now because it's kind of gone through all these kind of iterations. And FedEx has come to the table with some really great changes. And we've had to adapt. And I think adapting is kind of the number one key, to recognize that you are doing business with a multi-billion-dollar business that is moving the needle to stay relevant, right? So this is a good thing for us. If I was doing business with a partner that had not changed along the way in the last 20 years, we'd be out of business, right? So the first thing I think is to embrace the change. And I know everybody's like, oh yeah, right. Easy for you to say. And it's not easy. It is going to, involve change. There are going to be redraws and areas that move left and right. But for our experience today, we've always leaned into change. We've always leaned into kind of what the customer's asking of us. And it's not always been easy, but the conversations have always been fair. And we've implemented change, we've hired more people, we've transitioned. But I think overall it's brought in more volume. You'll hear me say quite often more small volume because no one is overnighting a refrigerator. So you're welcome, right? So we're asking for more volume. So it's just growth. We've been provided more growth area as well as volume. So for us, it's been a really successful addition. The compliances are pretty black and white when it comes to 2.0 terminals because it's TSA. So some of the things in our other terminals that we've had to kind of fight with the drivers about uniforms and things like that just gets easier. You just have to do it, and everyone in the terminal is doing it. So it kind of levels the playing field there as well. So outside of that, I think just to kind of set the level, of what to expect maybe when you're going into a 2.0 terminal, is to be transparent with your team. Even if it's, I have no idea what this looks like, hang in there with us. But I think the big thing that I get from a lot of contractors is, how do they expect me to do exactly what I'm doing now with 10 commits, right? With 10:30 commits or with noon commits? Like, there's no way my guy's gonna, it's not going to be. It's going to change. It's not going to get, the guy that's doing 180 stops is not going to do 180 stops with 15 time commits. That route is going to change, right? So I think just the idea of being open to something new and not, resisting it is the first step. They're not layering 2.0 on top of exactly what you're doing. They're going to shift. They're going to give you some bandwidth for new routes. And that's a conversation. They're going to understand STEM, right? Well, I drive an hour and 15 minutes to my first stop. How the heck am I going to get to a 10:30? They have plans in place for that. They don't expect the, unreasonable. Now they do expect quite a bit, not lying. um, and I always just say, hire, hire, hire. There are going to be people, good people, that just don't want to change, whether they've been in the terminal for a really long time and this is their exit strategy, or whether they just don't like new, right? So hire, 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 stay prepared, make sure you're, communicating with your teams. And it just all does start with you, right? It starts with your leadership, and your willingness to serve your customer.
Yeah. Now, you did talk about a lot of the good in terms of there's volume and there's potential growth areas, and you talked about how there's some of the changes. Uh,
Yeah.
what would you say are the most challenging parts, though? If you're talking about like maybe some areas, maybe some of it was just the growing pain, but if you're talking about
Yeah.
what are the hardest parts about 2.0
The
and
hardest parts,
some,
yeah, hardest parts for us is dispatch time.
Mhm.
And it's not awful. I mean,
Yeah.
there are days that it gets pretty bad weather. Our trucks come in from, cold weather. So cold weather comes into cold weather. So there's a lot of delays. And that is a morale killer when you're there at 8 and they're standing around and it's 10:30 and you have to be somewhere at 10:30. The good thing is that FedEx does give you that grace, but it doesn't change your staff, or your employee's day, right? They're like, I could have gotten started at 9. Now I'm not getting started until 10:30. And it makes for a long day. So those are few and far between, but they were definitely more difficult when we started. We also launched November, or whatever it was, October 28th, right, of 2023. So that was pretty challenging in itself. That it was at peak during bad weather, right? So I think that's probably the hardest part, is to just get the drivers to take a deep breath and know that, on those days where it gets super late, you might have to put managers in a truck, to
Yeah.
provide a little bit of relief. And it just, they don't happen super often, but when they do, it's, people they don't like late dispatches. And these are, can be extraordinarily late.
Yeah. I think one of the things, and I know we've talked about it before, is that some of this transition FedEx is still figuring out too. So you talked about it right there, late dispatch times, communication. What have you found is the right way to work with FedEx and to communicate to them if maybe, things aren't going well in the new transition, or you feel like maybe the new contract isn't properly paying you? Like what's the right kind of tone and conversations to be having with FedEx?
Yeah, so you'll hear from me quite often that, fair and staying in communication, building those relationships with your terminal manager and your SPS is key. They are our customer, right? So I think that's the big key to always remember. And you'll hear me say that over and over. They're not your partner, they're not your friend, they're not your colleague, they are the customer. So we need to serve them. So, my position is, if I had these resources, if we could get it right, I would be able to service you better. And these are kind of the handcuffs that I'm wearing. So, document often, regularly, and try to keep the emotion and the opinion out of it. And just track, and then, stay in touch, and say, hey, I'm seeing this pattern. I'm going to keep an eye on it, but something's going to have to change if this is what we keep seeing. So I think those are just, your key. And then that might, lead to a renegotiation. But I think it comes with not just saying, 2.0 sucks and everything sucks. And, it
Yeah.
just, you're never going to get an audience or respect that way.
Yeah, I mean, and to a certain extent, I'm sure there's plenty of people at FedEx that agree. They think 2.0 sucks. They think that this transition is not a
Maybe
fun trans. Well, I mean,
difficult,
not,
correct?
yeah, what I would say, like the transition's not fun for anyone. Everyone may
No.
see that, hey, 2.0 is where we need to go. That end goal looks great, but no
Mm-mm.
one's loves changing everything for everyone and having to deal with all of the, like, a senior manager's getting complaints and challenges from everyone at the terminal because nobody's happy when you have to change stuff.
Yeah.
But I think there is a reality of let's work together on this and make sure that if there are things to hold FedEx accountable to understand how you can do that and have a productive conversation there, because it doesn't mean just like, oh man, we both think this isn't fun, so let's just not say anything about it. It is
Right.
important to make everything work seamlessly as a partnership to highlight the challenges and, like you said, find fair and constructive ways to talk about it and bring data when you can.
Yeah. And when you realize that you are the vendor and you're serving that customer, it changes the game a little bit. How you treat your fuel card vendor, your workers' comp vendor, your payroll vendor, right? Your truck vendors, your insurance, whatever that looks like, those are you're their customer. So it kind of sets the tone that, sometimes change isn't good, but you need your vendors. FedEx needs us, but we also need them.
Yeah.
Right? Like
Yeah.
I got a lot of trucks without FedEx, let me tell you.
Yeah,
Right?
it's true. So if let's say you're somebody new who's coming into this space and maybe you've bought a business that you're expecting to go to in 2.0 soon, or maybe it's already just gone 2.0, but you're early. Are there any tips or kind of operational things you tell people to focus on as kind of the first step when they're getting into 2.0?
Yeah, just figure out service, and then streamline from there. Try to maintain your service, learn your pickups, learn the timing, and just keep sharpening that pencil and keep, and not obviously, you can't throw finances to the wind because you'll run
Yeah.
out of money. But you may have to work a little bit harder in the beginning. And I always say it's not harder, it's different. But if you're coming in new, I think that's a great place if they'll allow you to come in new before 2.0, because it allows you to kind of level set and right size as to what your contracted area looks like today.
Mhm.
And then you can make the change to 2.0. If you're jumping in and it's, regular and then 2.0, it gets a little bit muddy and it's going to be a little bit bumpy along the way. But I would just say focus on learning the business, focus on saying yes to the customer. They're a fairly forgiving customer when you're trying,
Yeah.
right? When you actually try and you're not just like, screw you, the stocks, I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
Dig your heels in. When you're leaning in and you truly are showing progress, they're pretty understanding.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
I see a question from Scott that's kind of a follow-up here. When you're thinking about how you've grown with Express, there's no way I know that you can give you can get an exact percentage growth to expect, but
Right.
can you give a sense of the ways that Express has allowed you to grow in
Yeah,
2.0?
so when we first started, we actually were a very small contract, 9 to 11 routes every day. And my manager had actually said to me, "Man, this would just be so nice." We were 6 days a week, and he was like, "It would just be really nice if we could get that volume and growth that we could put another BC on, so that they both didn't have to work, the one didn't have to work 6 days. We could kind of share responsibilities. If there was a call off, we could have coverage." He's like, we just don't have enough stops or routes to support another supervisor or BC in that contract. So for us, the 2.0 brought the volume that we needed. We got that 200 to 300 more stops per day. Um, Again, the small boxes were nice. And it was different, not, it
Yeah.
was different, not harder. But we went from, 9 to 11 to 13 routes, and it kind of got a little bit easier for us for coverage, for the split schedule. And then because we were doing well, we actually got, they redistricted another terminal's routes and kind of pushed them into ours, and we touched up against it because we were doing so well. We were awarded those routes. So then we grew by two more routes, and then more came, and we actually grew by more routes than that. So I think we're running 17 or 18 routes per day now. Two managers, right? We have a full BC and then a full supervisor that work. We run just a few routes on the seventh day. So we're not fully staffed on the seventh day. So it's just made things really solid for us. The revenue's there, coverage is there. We don't have any, major sweep routes. We do have a bulk route, but that route also sweeps some pickups and kind of is more of an industrial route as well. So we've been able to really kind of leverage the growth, not just from stop volume, but from area.
Yeah.
And now we're, and at that kind of sweet spot of like 17 to 20 routes is when you can start really making some impact and making change. I think when it gets bigger than 20, and we have some contracts that have 34, 40 routes a day. Those are, obviously a challenge to manage for one reason or another. And then some of your smaller contracts are also difficult, because when you run a small contract and you're lean, Call-offs and things like that can really kind of put you in a bind because you don't have a deep bench of extra resources. There's not, oh, let me just collapse this route and we'll be good. You're kind of running, 9 for 9 or 10 for 10. So that sweet spot. So it really did provide us, some stability, which I really enjoyed.
Yeah. Another question here from on the 2.0 side. When you were going through the transition, was there
Mhm.
ever any time where you thought you might lose territory, or were there conversations about that, or anything like that as you were going through it?
So in our existing contract, no. In one of our contracts that we're going to now, we've been told that we are going to be redistricted, or redrawn, right? That's the word. So they're going to redraw some of our area. There's also a new terminal being built nearby. So there's a lot of change. But from what we understand is we're gonna maybe lose two and push into maybe two or three. So we haven't, had like a net negative. And then add the volume on top of that, we should be at a net even or a net positive with where we were, where we are going. And again, that all has to do with how you're currently servicing, right? Stay solid, stay focused on your current contract, get it right today. You'll hear me say that, right? If you can see the horizon, right? June, July, August, September of this year, if you can see what's coming, get your house in order, if you will,
Yeah,
so that
this
you're ready
is
for it.
Yeah, very much a time to make sure that you are shoring up your business so that you can
Mhm.
prepare for change.
Yep.
Both to make sure you are hitting all the metrics FedEx has so that the change is as positive as it can be, and also that as operational things happen, hopefully, if you've kind of eliminated any of the normal day-to-day challenges in your current business as you make the 2.0 transition, you can just focus on those new challenges and get that handle, as soon as possible.
Yep.
One of the things too, I don't, have you seen any express drivers, maybe they close an express terminal nearby. Is that something where it's an employment opportunity where you're picking up express drivers, or has that not been the case?
When we first did the transition, they brought in like all the express terminal drivers
Mhm.
and we're like, hey, you know, these are the guys that are going to be, looking for
Yeah,
work.
yeah.
And they ended up using those guys as couriers. So I don't know what that looks like in other terminals because, like I said, we're moving into kind of this new normal.
Yeah.
We have hired in the past, gosh, 2 months, three express drivers. So they were in Isuzu Reach trucks and, they kind of popped right into our business routes. They're
Mhm.
already time commit savvy.
Yeah.
The big issue is they're Monday through Friday typically. So, going into a business route actually works for them. But, really good guys. I have a guy that's picking up 6 days, fairly regularly, enjoys the Saturday work with no pickups. But, they're trained. We do have to put them through the CT class and kind of treat them as an existing driver, recert, and put them through the road test and everything because they are two different systems. And it is a little clunky to get an express driver de-expressed,
Yeah.
deactivated in their system, and then activated in the independent contractor program. So it's a little bit different, but yeah, I think there's going to be, I think it's going to open up a huge amount of experienced drivers that are already used to a little bit higher standard than the ground drivers, in the past have been held to.
Okay.
So it's good,
Perfect.
good stuff,
Yeah.
good stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, really good stuff.
So I'm sure there will be other questions on 2.0. I just don't want to spend this entire time on
Yeah,
2.0,
yeah,
but
yeah,
that kind of leads us to the next one already. So we're talking employees.
yeah. Mm.
If finding express drivers isn't the challenge, but what would you say today and maybe in 2026 in general feels like some of the biggest challenges when it comes to retaining and finding good employees?
Uh, yeah, so for us, wages versus quality of the talent, I
Mm.
think that's out there. Wages are higher than ever. We actually started probably, I don't know, 6, 8 months ago, not hiring any entry-level drivers unless they were referrals from friends or jumpers or package handlers that knew us, right? That we kind of had a relationship with already. We even changed our ads, our job portals, everything to kind of get this tenured driver between the safety and just the turnkey. For the entry level driver that was looking for a higher wage for $10 or $20 more a day, you're getting a better quality driver. And hopefully that'll trickle down to your Schedule L, right? Your safety score. So you spend a little bit more on the front end and you have less incidents, accidents, and issues. We've also been, I think one of the other things is there were a lot of people that were unemployed in the early 2025 timeframe. That caused quite a bit of strain because you're hiring people that really didn't have anything to lose because they were already, right? Where if you hire someone that's already employed, they're going to think long and hard about making a decision to come work for you. So they're a little bit more vested because they don't want to give up a career that's already good and decent, to try out FedEx delivery.
Yeah.
And then one of the other things is then in Ohio, marijuana was legalized. So that's been a little bit of a challenge. And just having an open conversation with people to say like, hey man, I don't judge you for smoking weed, right? I get it's legal and that's your pastime. But you can't do it when you're federally regulated. So
Yeah.
if you want to work for me, you have to get clean and you have to stay clean. And those are conversations, and sometimes the conversation is like, I never had a reason to stop, right?
Yeah.
Other trucking vendors don't drug test or other companies don't drug test. So it was never really an issue, but I want a career, so I'm going to do this with you. Or it's, no, I enjoy my pastime and move along.
Yep.
um, but I think that's part of in Ohio, that's been kind of the issue that we've had. And then um, you know, it just the wages have just inflated well beyond general inflation or cost of living increases. So that's made things challenging. The influx of contingency, and we do run contingency runs, but the influx of contingency and DCA routes and things like that have definitely added to the mix of an increased wage. But we kind of bring people on just to kind of tell you what we've done to counter that is we've
Yeah.
brought people on in a staggered wage increase. So we'll bring them on at kind of a training wage, do an increase once they're independent, which means that they can come into the terminal, get their ground cloud and things started, get out of the terminal independently. Not that they won't have questions, but they can do the majority of their work independently. And then we'll review them when that happens and or 60 days. And then we'll do, an annual review after that. But I think starting them at the top and then them falling short is also a risk, right? Well, you have 4 years experience doing this, that doesn't necessarily translate
Yeah.
right to what we do on the pickup and delivery side. So to stagger someone and set some really clear benchmarks, I'm going to start you at 50 stops a day, but I need you to do 130. Right. So it's just these conversations and expectations for this new um, kind of higher increased pay wage that we're up against.
Yeah, and quickly, one of the things you touched on. So I know that drivers all have to like get drug tested. Does the same apply
Mhm.
to AOs and
Mhm.
owners? Okay, so
Yes. Yes.
if you're on
Mhm.
the business, you could get drug tested. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You're in the system. You're official.
Yeah. Uh, so on the retention side, what are the strategies you've used over the years? Because I know you have some of the longest tenured employees of a
We
lot of the
do.
contractors I talk to. So what are some of the things you guys have done over the years to build that culture?
So we obviously from a benefits and wage side, obviously we're constantly reviewing wages. And there's always that question, paying somebody $20 more a day, what does that look like on the week when you have to then hire a new person, train them, get them in, so when you take a look at the investment you're making in a good person, or a strong driver, what does that look like compared to losing them over $10 a day? Right. So wage, obviously, competitive wages is number one. We also offer full medical benefits. We offer ancillary benefits. We offer 401k with match. And then we have other benefits that we pay for that Slicker pays for 100%, like an EAP, an employee assistance program. We offer a Ramsey Smart Dollar to our drivers because a lot of you don't pay me enough is you don't manage your money well. So if we can work together to give them a strong wage, but then also give them ways to get ahead financially, that's where we want it. We want to get there together, and supporting them, depending on wherever you are in your life, whether it's paying your car off or buying your first car or, going through a divorce and trying to kind of figure out what that looks like today, or child support. So we're constantly trying to offer those services to kind of better the culture at Slicker Trucking. Open door policy, we have processes and reporting procedures for anything anyone could possibly need, right? So, from uniforms to conflict resolution, we have a place that they can go to feel safe and report and get what they need. So responsiveness is key. And then all the benefits, that we have as a company. And we do, I hear we throw one hell of a party, we're told.
Yes, you do. That's awesome.
So that's always a hook, I guess.
Yeah, that'll do.
Hey guys, we just wanted to pause for a moment to invite you to our free events that are happening throughout the year. Whether you're just getting started in the logistics industry or you're looking to optimize your current operation, Route Consultant has events that are designed specifically for you. So head on over to routeconsultant.com/events or check out our show notes to register for free today. Also, while you're here, don't forget to like and subscribe to the Industry Insights with Route Consultant podcast so that you don't miss out on the stories, the advice, and the updates that are happening throughout the industry. We appreciate you being here and hope to meet you in person soon. Now let's get back to the episode.
Now, are there any specific incentives that you use for your drivers or BCs that, beyond just the typical pay structures?
Yeah, so we do, so we got away from stop bonuses because we do have a chunk of rural and we have a chunk of kind of residential, and then we have business routes. And to do stop thresholds, you have to kind of manage those individually, right? Like based on the complexity of the role. And for us at Slicker, yes, there are some differences between somebody that can, drive a P1200 and slay 300 stops versus someone that's in a box truck and can only do 120. But the core value of the human that works for you is the same. Right? I need someone to drive 210 miles a day and deliver 40 boxes. And I need somebody that drives 40 miles and can do 210 boxes. And those humans, those people that work for me have a value. There's a base value. So we got away from stop thresholds quite a while ago. I would probably say 5 or 6 years ago, as well as the fact that does in Ohio change hourly wages and the recalculation of overtime, which I could spend an entire session on that alone. Yeah. So we're going to get away from that, but we bonus for culture. We bonus for doing the right thing, and we try to stay away from bonuses and lean more towards interim and annual reviews, right? Like you don't need a bonus, you get a paycheck every week. You're welcome. And thank you, right? Yeah. Every week on time, you're welcome. But when you go above and beyond, say you're done at 4 or 5 o'clock and a truck breaks down and you go and take the rest of those stops or pick up that driver or sweep their pickups and help us serve the customer, help us maintain service, help us maintain safety, whatever that looks like, that would then receive a bonus. And then all of those things like the everyday driver duties, hitting your thresholds, making service, low lytic scores or better scores, low truck maintenance, unnecessary truck maintenance, all of those things are going to hit your annual review. Right. And you should be able to do that without what I like to call a bribe. Right. Because bonuses can be bribes. And then on the BC side, we are changing kind of our program a little bit because the BCs need to be ultimately responsible for the service and the KIs at that terminal, right? When there's high turnover or there's low service, it's not just happening, right? It's not just like, oh my God, service is bad. No, it's not just happening to you. You're running this ship. So similar to other franchise markets, they're going to be held to the KIs and the statistics at that terminal. And then we're going to establish a bonus program for them based on a quarterly performance. So, 3 months of gold or 3 months of silver have different weights, making service, making pickups, PPOD scores, ride scores, but also holding them to things like unnecessary bonuses. Right? Like, are you not setting the team up for success? And then I have to go ahead and bonus people just to get the work done. Excessive overtime or any overtime, if that's, the way. Turnover and hiring, are people being trained correctly? The length it takes people to get ramped up, right? Does it take somebody 3 or 4 weeks to get trained, or can I get somebody in and in 2 weeks you've done an excellent job of training them, right? And they're pretty turnkey. And then the manageable workloads, making sure people are working a full day, limiting bulk routes and things like that, if possible, putting people in the right trucks, and then just communicating with us. So all of those things are going to be part of kind of our BC, KI, and profitability plan. So I'll share more on that when we get there. But those are things that we're working on in 2026 instead of just the core, are you guys hitting 99.7 every day?
Okay.
There's a lot to manage today, right? From PPOD, rides, signatures, like there's a lot of moving pieces in the P&D BC's world. DRO, all the things, inaccurate DRO, all the things that kind of contribute to a challenging day for them. I also bonus on how often they stay out of a truck. That means that they've done their job right and they can get to managing the business the way I need them to. And the more they are managing the business, the more I can step away and work on what's next.
Yeah. And do you find that you have completely separate drivers and managers between P&D and Linehaul, or is there some overlap of abilities and skills there?
We do have overlap, but we have them completely separated. Our
Yeah.
senior, so we have a layer of senior managers between the local BCs and Dave and I,
Mhm.
and those guys are kind of cross-trained and cross-cover. But for the most part, they're pretty much separate,
Yeah.
to manage those individual lines of business because they are super different.
Yeah, they
And
are.
Linehaul is 24 hours a day, so that's always fun when the P&D guys are like, I'm going to bed. But they're up doing dro, so it has the timing challenges. I always say that being a BC in this business is different than being a manager in any other business. Phone calls come in at night, because that's when your drivers are off work and thinking of things that they want from you.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
and then, and the call offs come in the middle of the night, middle of the morning. So it's just a different animal. It's definitely a different type of manager that you need.
Okay. So let's jump off of employees. Let's talk a little
Yeah.
bit about trucks this
Ooh.
year. So I think you typically have kind of a yearly annual refresh type of at least
Mhm.
review of your fleet. So how are you thinking about your trucks and your strategy around them in 2026? I guess P&D versus line haul separately.
Yeah, so our line haul strategy is totally different than anybody else's. We don't go very far on
Yeah.
our line haul. We're local, so I think the furthest we drive is maybe 3 hours one direction, and then back. So I don't need a $200,000 truck. I don't need a $130,000 truck. So we have kind of a used truck and replacement. We kind of buy in at 300,000 miles and kick them out around 900,000 to a million. And then we have our own maintenance staff. We have our own tow truck. So we can really be responsive in that way. We're also regional. So if there is a breakdown, like I'm never going, oh my gosh, I'm in Ohio and my guy's in California. What do I do? We're fairly regional. So my guys at night are kind of problem solving on their own. They have to drive by one of my 7 terminals at any time throughout the night. So they are just an hour away from any extra spare truck that I have available. So it's a completely different strategy in that regard. But we do, like right now, we are in the process of buying 8 new trucks and kind of decommissioning 8 other trucks. And that's going to happen probably, I don't know, maybe May or June. We'll start working on that on the line haul side. P&D, we always buy new in September, October. And then we keep our existing trucks in and use them as rentals through peak, and then we start selling them in the January, February timeframe. Peak lasted a little bit longer this year because of weather, so we're getting into selling those trucks now. But we bought, we took on a new contract, so we bought, over 30 brand new trucks, and a few used trucks, in October. So we'll be kind of moving through those. I think the big issue, that we have now is fuel.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I
Yeah.
think that's just hitting everybody at the pump. And I think the big thing is, that the new trucks that we're buying, unfortunately, they're just not like they used to be built. So
Uh,
we're finding that brand new trucks are breaking, you know, pretty, regularly as well. Whether they come in and have a couple electrical issues, or they come in and have some factory, whatever. So it's been keeping our maintenance staff, pretty busy. We hired 2 more mechanics, to keep them a little bit more regional. So even though we are regional, a little bit more regional, so that they're only really covering about an hour a time each person. And then, really leaning into, in 2026, additional ways to maximize mileage and, fuel efficiency. And then also, just really leaning into new vendors, right? Finding vendors. We can't do all the work on all the trucks. Some of them are under warranty. So making those relationships, finding vendors, finding way to save, whether that's nitrogen in the tires or fuel supplements, whatever that looks like. We are constantly looking for ways, to leverage not only the truck health, but the cost savings.
mhm. Yeah, and I know that's that's really all you can't say that, fuel is going to be cheaper. We don't know when it's going to be cheaper, so you're trying to do everything you can to mitigate all of those that you can.
Yeah.
Have you gotten much into electric yet? Is that a part of your current
So yeah,
strategy?
yeah. So we have one. We have a bright drop, and then we are now testing a Harbinger, um, P700. It actually just got delivered, so we're super excited
Okay.
about learning about that. I will say electric is a little tough in our winter that we had this year. So we had like 19 days of negative, like greater than, or I guess lesser than -5. It was like -12, -11, which just doesn't, electric just doesn't like any of that, none of that.
Yeah.
But they're cool trucks. And it is nice to know that, the electric bill, did go up a little bit. We're still working. Like I said, we got that in October. And
Yeah.
with the weather, it just kind of changed things. So we don't have the data that I would like. But having the 2 trucks side by side, the Harbinger truck is beautiful. It's big. We're really excited to get it on the road and kind of see what that's going to look like. Um, and then, we have a need for some trucks going forward. So we may be leaning into electric. Our guys can get certified to fix them. So that kind of takes the pressure off of where we were last year when we wanted to go electric, like 12 months ago last year.
Mhm.
It was just, who's going to fix them? Where are we going to get parts? And everything is just much more readily available. And programs like Harbinger, they have like training programs. So they'll literally certify our guys, and we'll be able to, you know,
Yeah.
continue to work on things like that. So yeah, more data to come. I'm a data girl, so I'm like, where are the numbers? And they're like, well, that day it, like, we didn't even get 40% charge out of it one day because it was just like,
So cold.
it
Yeah.
was so cold, man. It was just so cold. I'm like, if the truck doesn't want to work, how can I make my employees
Yeah.
work?
Jeez. Yeah, that's fair. Also, Joseph, I saw you raising your hand. If you have a question, if you'll just send it either to the chat or the Q&A, and I'll make sure to answer it. Okay, so we've got about 15-ish minutes yet left. So
Yeah.
we'll get to if people have other questions about trucks and fuel this year, feel free to send them in the chat. One of the things I wanted to talk about, and I see a few questions around it, is around purchasing and getting into the space.
Yeah.
One of the things, though, before we get too far into that, I saw this question. I thought, we'll start there, Amy. If you were new, what do you recommend for a first-time contractor, P&D or line haul, since you've done both?
Um, wow. So So everybody asks me which is better, right? And I say it's frequency and impact, right? Line haul has less moving parts, but the parts are bigger. And when there's an issue, it's a big issue.
Yeah.
You only have to worry about a mailbox mostly on the P&D side, as far as accidents, but your staff is different, right? You have higher quality staff, not quality, but higher trained professionals in the line haul space versus, a guy that's done Uber or delivered or landscaped for a couple of years. So I would say from an ease of operation, I would, and maybe a learning curve, I think P&D is easier to get into. It's also more readily accessible, right? Line haul is a little bit harder to get into. And if you don't have any logistics or professional semi-truck training, line haul is going to be a little bit difficult for you to understand and run out of the gate. Now, if you have a BC and you're just buying as an investor, right, they're kind of both the same at that point. P&D has a lot of moving parts. So if it's not a successful operation that you're buying, it can get bumpy, and you're going to have to roll up your sleeves or have someone that's going to roll up their sleeves on your behalf. So I think that's kind of where the rubber meets the road. I don't know if I answered that correctly.
No, yeah, no, that's good. And, I would add to people who are thinking about Express, I think the 2.0, it does have opportunity for you to buy in before the volume gets there. So there's that upside. But if you're worried about a bunch of changes in 2.0, Linehaul's not really experiencing much
No,
operation change from 2.0, but it's also not getting a ton of growth from 2.0. So it's more kind
correct.
of moving forward as expected. And in general, you'll find that growth in line haul isn't as kind of chunky. It's more of you choose when you're wanting to add runs, and that can
Yep.
feel different in terms of what you want and where you want to be. There's different, there's 100 different ways we could take that conversation and the
Yeah.
P&D versus line haul conversation. But I think
Well, I think line haul growth sometimes comes at a non-contracted, kind of comes in a non-contracted package,
yeah,
where like we have 21 contracted routes, but we run 20 spares.
yeah,
Some people see that as risk. I've run the same spares for, 5 years, and we've continually grown it. So if you service it well, it becomes kind of yours. But yes, is it contracted? No. Could they flop it somewhere else? Well, yeah, if I wasn't servicing it, or if the volume dips, but that's a risk that, you kind of take on the line haul side that isn't necessarily translated on the P&D side.
yeah,
When you grow on P&D, it's typically a contracted area. Even if it's temporary, it's contracted, whether
yeah,
that's contingency or DCA, it's contracted for some reason, where on the line haul side, you show up with a truck, if you're already in and you show up with a truck and a guy and it's onboarded, they'll use you
yeah.
and then they just keep using you, and sometimes it's contracted, sometimes you can like turn that into a contracted run, or whether that's dedicated or unassigned, or even city work. But that's kind of the contractual difference, is that sometimes those runs aren't on paper.
Yeah. Now, what I'm seeing from several people, just to make sure you understand kind of what types of opportunities there are to get into this space. Most of the ones, so Route Consultant, we have businesses for sale. If you go to our website, you'll see them. The vast majority of businesses we have for sale, FedEx, Amazon, Bread, whatever industry it is, are businesses that you're buying, where you're taking over the business and transitioning control, but you're inheriting the people, the trucks, the contracts.
Mm-hmm.
There are times where you could get businesses that are, basically it's a startup almost.
Mm-hmm.
There's a site with FedEx called Build a Ground Biz where you can find free routes. Those will typically not be the routes that you see from us. What those mean, so Amy, if you could walk through a little bit of the difference between, what does it mean when you're starting with a business versus if you're trying to start from scratch with FedEx for free?
Yeah. So, first of all, caveat, free ain't free.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's just put that one to bed. Free is not free. And if you're new, like have no experience, coming from the outside, whether you're a different type of entrepreneur and you're just coming into the space, free is very clunky and it's very expensive.
Yeah.
So free ain't free. So when you come in and you buy like a route consultant route, or you're buying an existing operation, there's a lot of infrastructure. Maybe it's not perfect. We have different levels. You're buying an existing business, somebody just wants to retire and it's all operational and everything's good and good standing, or you're buying a fire sale, which also is kind of a step in at least the right direction. There's some foundation to start with. But starting up new, I will tell you, we took on an opportunity in October of this year, and after 20 years, free wasn't free, and it was challenging. We stood up, October. Oh my gosh, it was like the midweek of or middle of the month, and peak hit, and it was like ramping up. There was a staggered ramp up. So it was challenging even for us. And we've been in it 20 years and we've done this, 10, 15 times, where we've kind of stood up and kind of moved pieces and grown and, done contingency and turned the contingency into a contract. So I would say, the stress of starting from scratch, when you just don't have the knowledge of the network and the tools or any types of resources, vendor setup, relationships. I mean, it's a struggle. So what I tell people is buy into a solid operation that you can learn, get your feet wet, make some revenue right out of the gate, be in the green, right? Stay in the black, right? All those good things. And then from there, take on a free area, right?
Yeah.
And then you can leverage that investment over two operations. But you got some resources that you can kind of lend. You have the knowledge, the experience, and that's where that organic growth comes in, right? And we've bought in, I joke now and I say we're not in the buying routes game anymore. We're big enough that we
Yeah.
can kind of lean in, but we're still buying in, right? Like I didn't pay for that new contract that we stood up with in October, but I paid for it, right? I had to buy
Yeah.
I had to buy
Yeah.
17 new P1000s and a couple straight trucks, and I had to hire, and I had to buy 20 scanners and 20 iPads and do a data plan for 20 more devices and 20 more ground cloud accesses. So I mean, it's free ain't free.
Yeah.
But that's an investment that you make. My portfolio is now that much bigger, and my revenue stream this year will be that much bigger. I said yes to the customer. Hopefully that will translate, as it has in the last 19, 20 years, by saying yes and positioning ourselves, in a way to, burden some of that hard work. But you're going to pay for it one way or another. It just, is it structurally sound, and is there a foundation, or are you starting from scratch? So I
And
think those are.
what I always tell people too is beyond all that, it's also FedEx is expecting you to be successful. And so if you are buying one that is extremely operationally difficult and it is your first opportunity, or not buying one, coming in free on something that is extremely operationally difficult, FedEx isn't going to give you some giant grace period to figure it out. And that's a way to start off with a black mark. And maybe that's the end of your FedEx career just because you decided to do something for free. It's much easier, just like Amy said, to start with something that it's a great business at a fair price rather than a fair business at a great price. That great price often has some caveats, like Amy's saying. So it's what we always encourage people to do is find one that you feel comfortable operating, a business and a manager and a driver staff that you feel comfortable meshing with and learning and taking all of that opportunity on. And then as you have opportunities to grow, Amy said it, and when we were in the business, we did the same thing all the time, where we would take these free opportunities because we knew the risks, we knew how to be successful, and we knew the costs for those businesses. So it is something where it is your next steps can be that way. It's just difficult as a first step.
Yep, as a first step. And it is much easier to grow on the P&D side, and get in on the P&D side. So if you're looking to get into line haul and it's just a barrier that you can't break into, or you don't want to, they're a little bit more expensive also. They're higher value. So, but if you don't want to take on that bite right away, get into P&D, establish your relationships, and invest some time, in this new career, in this new journey, and then get into Linehaul and then make those relationships and kind of grow from there.
Yeah. Now, we have a few more questions that I'm going to get to, but I just want to make sure that if you're on here and you're trying to figure out good next steps to learn more, we do new investor summits throughout the year. So if you're a new buyer trying to learn, that's one of the best ways. We have it at our offices here in Nashville. We actually have one on Friday, but it is completely full. We are not fitting anybody else in the building. So the next one is April 16th. So if you do want to come, that's the one to sign up for, because and sign up quickly, because like we literally are locking the doors and saying, and we have a wait list for it may be adding people, but go to April 16th if you're trying to get in. And if you're a current contractor, we have different events throughout the year. We have a Linehaul one in our offices in Nashville on April 17th. And then we have a P&D one later this summer. I can't remember if it's June or July, but really focused on the topics for those industries, the things that we're seeing. We'll bring in different speakers to talk about what we're seeing across a wide variety of things, a full day event. And then we've got a bread one later this year too. So there's different ones throughout the year that will happen. So you'll see Amy at P&D one, and you'll be able to learn from all of those. But whether you're a new investor or contractor, we do have those in-person events that are free to attend. You just have to come on out to Nashville, and I promise we'll make sure you have a good time.
Absolutely.
So a question here, Amy. Any tips for contract renegotiations?
All of them.
Yeah. Any tips in 30 seconds? I'm sure there's nothing else to talk about after
So
that.
I always say, you'll hear me say this. I write all of my renegotiations like a business case. So use Spotlight, use the data that they have given you to track, compare it with your own numbers. Don't just use theirs. Don't just use yours. Compare them together. Find the delta of kind of what's not, matching or meshing. And then just, get your data together and then be fair in your requests. They're going to listen to reason. They're not just going to listen to, I don't make enough.
Yeah.
I need more, right? They're going to listen to, this is changed in my network. This is changed in my operation. These are new, facts and figures, and this is where I'm short or not, this is what I need to continue to service the customer the way that you want them serviced. And I think that's the way to go about it. I always say get buy-in from your SPS, your service provider specialist, as well as your local terminal. Make sure they're on board, and then go ahead and put the request in for renegotiation. But if you don't have your information to them in advance, they're not going to read it. They're not going to consider it. It's already, that boat, the ship has kind of sailed. Not that you couldn't go back for renegotiation, but if your contract is up, you're going to get an invite. FedEx is going to send you an invite that says, hey, we're going to renegotiate here in 4 to 6 months. This is the time to send us, this is the deadline to send us your unique characteristics or your requests for reconsideration, for us to look at the numbers, whether it's volume related or staffing related or resource related, or just cost of, economic change in your CSA, whatever that looks like. They're open to listen, but you got to bring it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to do a few lightning questions.
Yeah.
So I'll answer one of these quickly. Is there financing available in this space? Yes. We do probably 70-80% of our deals with some kind of financing, whether it's bank financing, SBA, conventional, seller financing. You can assume vehicle debt. There's a lot of options that we can walk you through to try to make the financing side of the equation work. But we have a large number of banks that we work with in this space specifically that fund these deals all the time and know what to look for.
Mm-hmm.
Why would owners sell if they're profitable, Amy?
Well, growth, freeing up some bandwidth, retirement, change in, scenery, old school, just don't want to do it anymore. Doesn't mean it's bad. They're just kind of over the changes. They don't want to lean into the new compliances and 2.0 and all of the things. But I think there's a lot of reasons why good contractors either want to get out completely or want to peel off a little piece. There's scale, in some terminals, you may have grown outside of your own capacity. Or you might want to just, you have a growth opportunity, but you're kind of handcuffed and you don't want to get too much bigger, but there's an opportunity. So you can sell, free up a little bit of white space, and then dive back in.
Yeah, 100% agreed. And it's funny. One of the only things that's constant with FedEx is change. We have these conversations all the time over the years that, for a decade, where people say, why would people be selling if they're profitable? I think personal reasons, retirement are for sure there, but across the entire spectrum of time, last decade or so, there's always been something that's a new change that FedEx is
Yeah.
doing. There's always people that don't want to change, and that's fine. Like that is, you've run this business, maybe you've run this business for 20 years and you just don't, whatever the next new thing is the
Hmm.
last new thing that you can do. And so you decide to sell. And that happens all the time. Like I said, I've seen it every year since I've been here.
Yep.
And it's been a different thing every year. And it's just, that's the nature of these businesses, is that there's always a pretty similar number of these businesses that are for sale. Actually, it feels often, if you're going and looking at listings, that there's an infinite number, but there's about 6,000 contractors, and there's always a pretty similar percentage of those contractors that are selling their businesses or selling a piece of their
Yeah.
businesses.
As I always say, as soon as I feel like I've learned it all and I'm an expert, the rules change. And then I got to start all over again. Then I'm not the expert
Yeah.
anymore.
And
But
I
yeah.
saw this quick question about rural areas. So the way FedEx compensates, there's rural and there's urban, there's mixes. FedEx tries to create a contract that is profitable for any type of business. They have a black box of some profit range that they want everyone to be at, and they try to create revenue models that get you to that in a fair market. Sometimes they're great at it, and sometimes they miss the mark, and that's what renegotiations are for. That's what Amy was talking about, is providing the data to be able to say, if you think they've missed the mark, don't just yell, provide the data, and you can talk them
Yep.
through it. But whether it's rural or urban, that I don't change the valuation based on the composition of the territory, because
Yeah.
FedEx does try to compensate for whatever the market looks like.
Hmm. Yep.
Let me see if there's any quick ones. Have you felt your margins change with 2.0?
Um, Increased.
Okay.
Yep.
And typical ranges, we see everything from about 10 to 20% on average in P&D. It can be, line haul can be 10 to up to 25 or 30%. The reason there's a bigger range with line haul is there's a lot of variance. It can be, yes, there can be ones that are higher than either of those.
Hmm.
But typical ranges, line haul has more variance because of the way it's structured. There's different types of line haul structures. The way Amy does hers is very different than the way some line haul contractors do,
Hmm.
that are only solos or are only teams. Like there's very different types of line haul structures. We would see a wider variance. But
Well,
in
and the
general,
size of the
yeah,
business is different too. On line haul, you
sure.
might get 2 or 3 or 5 runs, where in P&D you're typically running 10, 15 to 17. So the net is a little bit lower on P&D, but the size of the operation and the revenue might be a little bit bigger in totality. So, you know what I mean? There's a value. You can't just say, well, that's, a 10 to 20 and this one's 20 to 30. So of course I want to go this direction. 20% of 2 million is a lot different than 10% of 20 million.
100%.
Right. And you can grow a lot easier in P&D. So there's reasons why you're in both. Dave and I, the diversification has allowed us to understand the network as well as grow in both. And there's seasons. There's seasons where line haul's through the roof. There's seasons where P&D is through the roof. And now we're going through a season where each of the contracts is changing. And those are going to grow individually without having to move a lot of pieces. Right? We're going to grow into 2.0. We're going to grow kind of wide and deep, if that makes sense. So that's kind of nice that we don't have to shift a lot of opportunities in order to open up new opportunities. It's just going to kind of come to us. So that's nice. Though there are some, new opportunities that we're even pursuing this late in the game. So
Perfect. Well, we're out of time here. So is the last question, Amy, would you do FedEx again if you could start over?
absolutely.
Easy.
Absolutely. We have 3 awesome kids. It's created stability. It's Dave and I are true entrepreneurs. We love the change. It's not without its challenges. We have other businesses. It's no more challenging than food service or investments or real estate. You know, every industry's got its challenges. But we really enjoy it. We enjoy the people part of it. We enjoy the changes, the community. And we've raised a family of 3. We have grandkids. Our sons are now in the industry. One's in Linehaul, one's in P&D. They're both going into management. So, and you hear that story quite a bit with contractors, this kind of legacy, business that you can hand down to your kids. It's not without its challenges, but I would 100% do it again.
Perfect. All right. Well, Amy, thank you so much for being here, for answering questions.
You got it.
And thank all of you for being here. This will be posted on YouTube. You can follow us on all the socials he posted in the chat. But for everyone, thank you for being here, for being live, and we'll see you next time.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Josh.
See ya.